on, everybody? Welcome to Perfect Reload Weekly, where we take a look back at the week in video game news. My name is Steve, and I am joined, as always, by my demonically possessed open box television, Christian Slater. Christian, how you doing this week, man?
Another week in this technological purgatory. This is going to happen to me. Why couldn't I haunt the television as someone interesting? It's like I'm watching the Truman Show on Downers.
Thanks, man. That's a good way to describe my life. So we actually got a little bit to talk about this week. I played a variety of games and also a pretty interesting week news-wise, so why don't we dig in? And I guess we're going to begin with Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I said last week that I was approaching the end of the game, and I didn't realize actually how close I was to the end of the game, because after I finished filming last weekend, I decided to play the game, and I kind of just, got in the groove. I didn't really have anything else to do that day, so I just decided, I'm going to sit here for a few hours and actually play this game. I rarely play games longer than like an hour at a time. I might play multiple times during the night, but really I can only do it like an hour at a time. I guess my attention is shot these days. I don't know. But I kind of got in the rhythm, and I realized that I was, things were kind of, breaking up here. The story is starting to wrap up and flesh out. And, I realized, I think if I just stick with this for another hour, I'm going to finish the game. And I did. So I wrote down some notes, and I'm going to kind of go through these. So the first thing, I guess I'm going to maybe start with my criticisms of the game first, and I am going to tell you right now, we're going to get into spoilers. So if you don't want to spoil the game for yourself, skip ahead. We are going to go full spoilers because, I want to get these thoughts out there. First thing is the story of the game. There really isn't much of one. It does eventually pick up, but it takes a while for it to get going. I mean, it really does. It's like the first 2/3 and arguably the first 3/4 of that game. There's not much happening for the story. It's very, very slow to unravel. And when you look at the story as a whole, once you've completed it, to be honest, I think it's fairly weak, especially coming out of kind of what the modern Star Wars landscape is right now. I think The Mandalorian is pretty strong. I know people complain that it's kind of aimless, but I mean, that show is essentially like a video game. You're just kind of off doing stuff, and it completes its story arc and sets up for the next season where we're just off to do new adventures. Here's the sequel. Andor got a lot of praise for how tight and well done that story was. I even thought the Obi-Wan story was pretty good. So to have this kind of stick out like a sore thumb in the middle of all of that is a little strange. I think there are interesting aspects that they could dig into, but the issue that they have is the issue that Rogue One had. Now, Rogue One took that issue and it made it work because it was a self-contained story, right? Like, here is a beginning, middle, and end. These characters are not going to show up again. Now, obviously, they do a show with Andor from that movie, but it is a prequel. It's not a sequel. If they did a sequel to Rogue One, it would be pointless. Like, these characters are dead. So the issue that we have, or that I have with Jedi Survivor, is we know that none of these characters ultimately factor into the larger story at hand. They are never going to defeat the Empire. They are never going to defeat all of their enemies because we've seen those movies. These characters are not in them. So if they end up doing something with that along the way, there's been a rumor going around that they're going to give the character Cal Kestis a show, possibly a movie. And so if they all of a sudden decide to like shoehorn him into being this like major character in the Star Wars story that we kind of know, the canonical story of the movies, it's just really bizarre because he doesn't fit, because we've never heard of him before all these games. And, they did that with the first game where they showed like Darth Vader shows up, and it's like, okay, we're trying to tie them together, which is fine. It was kind of a cameo appearance. He does come back in the second game. and it's an interesting thing, but it's one of those things where it's like, well, we know that we can't kill him, we know that we can't beat him, so it's cool that he's there, I guess, to tie it in, but ultimately it's kind of pointless because his story is finished by somebody else, so it's kind of this weird disconnect, but there are story elements there that are interesting, like trying to find all of these Jedi survivors, these people that survived Order 66, and doing all of that. And we've seen a little bit of it. Like I think Grogu from The Mandalorian survived. We saw flashbacks to that in the last season of The Mandalorian. So they do play off that, but the villain that they set up at the beginning of the game to be this main bad guy, this Dagon, I wish I could remember his name, Dagon something, the one-armed Jedi who has turned evil. His story kind of goes nowhere because he sort of just disappears from the game. Like, you encounter him 3 times. You have 3 different boss fights against him before you finally defeat him. And they're good. The 3rd boss fight is actually quite inventive with what they do, like style-wise. Like, you're fighting upside down, and his amputated arm like comes back in the form of an hallucination. Like, they do some interesting stuff with it. Like, mechanically, it's a cool fight and it's a cool moment of the game. But his story leading up to it is kind of like pointless. Like, he's not involved really in the story. And then you realize after you defeat him, well, I still have several hours to go with this game. Oh, he's not the real boss. Story twist, the guy that you could tell foreshadowing at the beginning of the game that's going to betray you is going to betray you, and he's the ultimate final boss of the game. And the issue that I have with him, with Bode, who, betrays you and becomes the final boss, and he's like, oh, I've been a Jedi the whole time, blah, 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 I have a lightsaber. His story could have been really interesting because he alludes to the fact that he has this daughter that he wants to protect, and his wife has passed. And, so it shows that, like, why he would betray Cal. The Empire says that they're going to provide safety for him and his daughter. Like, that makes sense. But we need, honestly, we needed flashbacks. We needed to see that relationship. We needed to see how his wife was lost. We needed to see him striking a deal with the Empire. How did they work their mitts, get their grubby little hands on him? How did they manipulate him? Like, we don't see any of that. It's just like, oh, I'm bad now. Sorry. I gotta take care of my daughter. And they try to like put some like emotional weight in it by involving her in the story. Like towards the end of the game, like you meet her and you're trying to keep her safe, and you promise that you're going to take care of her at the end of the game. There's a post-credits cutscene. They do some interesting things with the characters. They kill some people off that are important. Like Seer dies. Your mentor, is killed by Darth Vader. And there's just this big story disconnect because Cal at this point, his power level is he's like one of the most powerful Jedi we've ever seen, right? Like he can do these amazing abilities. And same with Seer. Like Seer, there's sections of the game where you play as her towards the end where she is like so powerful, like just moving like dozens of stormtroopers out of the way with the wave of her hand. And it's like, if these people are so powerful, why have we never heard of them before? It's the same thing that people had issues with in Hogwarts Legacy. Like, you become this like super powerful wizard, and a lot of those Harry Potter books and movies were about talking about like the wizards that came before and all the things that they've accomplished and how powerful they were, and yet your name never comes up. It's like the same thing with Skyrim. Like in Skyrim, you could do the Mages College, you could do the Dark Brotherhood, like you could become like the most fearsome warrior on the planet, but like nobody reacts like that. It's just that kind of disconnect. It's the issue with games that are open-ended, right? Like there's a linear story, but the linear story doesn't always line up with the actions that you are taking in the world. And that's a tough problem to solve. That's a really difficult issue to solve from a narrative standpoint, from a fiction writing standpoint. The mechanical aspect of writing a script and writing this lore, like that's a really hard thing to deal with. So I think the story is pretty weak. I think the characters, definitely don't have the same impact as maybe they did in the first game. They don't really set themselves up for a sequel. There's definitely going to be a sequel. This game is selling way too well for them to not do a third. And presumably they treat it like a trilogy. Oh, you can see my dog phasing in and out of the screen. Where I just lost my thought was he showed up and wants pets. Yeah, so there's no like cliffhanger at the end. There's nothing that says like, here's our next objective, here's our next enemy. None of that. There's none of that there whatsoever. There's kind of the thing like, well, let's take care of this little girl. So is the next game going to be you just taking care of this little girl? Like, I don't think that that's what they do with it. So I felt like, they took so long for the story to get going that it didn't feel rushed at the end. But the pacing was weird. They definitely needed to do something else with the pacing. Like, they could have spent so much time in the beginning parts of that game setting up Bode's backstory, showing us these flashbacks with his family and his relationships. They could have spent so much showing us how did the group fall apart from the original game. How did they go their separate ways? The only relationship that ever really gets fleshed out in this game is the relationship between Cal and Marin, who now have a romantic relationship. I'm sorry, what are you doing? Okay. And that's a shame because, there's what, 10-ish characters of major importance in this game, and only 2 of them really get a story fleshed out. So it's just odd. Like, it's really, really odd. And that's what really kind of bumps it down for me, because the gameplay, to get into the positives, I mean, this game is unbelievably tight when it comes to a gameplay perspective. It is so much fun to play. The combat styles are varied. Yes, you're most likely going to settle into only using 1 to 3 that you really like. For me, it was the lightsaber in each hand. They give you 5 different stances to choose from. You can equip 2 at a time. The variety in enemies, the mini bosses, there's actually like a good bit of humor in the game that comes kind of out of the blue and all at once, like halfway through the game, or maybe a little bit past halfway through the game. Like Rick the Door Technician, that's like an awesome little like joke and gag in the game. I like that quite a bit. Nice little, breath of levity in the game. But it's just such a like contrasting game because you look at games like the original run of video games, let's say like 80s through mid 90s, when in mid 90s is really when you saw the rise of story becoming a big part of video games. Like, you always had story in like PC RPGs of the 80s, text-based games like Zork, stuff like that. Like, there was always that element to those RPGs, but it wasn't until the mid 90s I feel that more and more games had story than didn't. Nobody really cared about the story of Mario. It was just a great playing game. But that doesn't really fly anymore when this is a AAA massive budget narrative game with a hugely successful and popular franchise. Like, you've got to have that amazing gameplay and you've got to have that amazing storytelling. And I mean, they really just kind of shit the bed on the story side of things in this game. It was a huge letdown. And really the saving grace was the gameplay. It really can't be stressed enough that if you are looking for like a good action adventure game and just don't care about Star Wars or don't care about story, like, you can play this game and be totally fine. You could run off into the world and have yourself a good old time. There's plenty of stuff to do, lots of collectibles, puzzle rooms, challenge rooms. Like, there's all these things that can pad out the gameplay. Not necessarily pad out like in a bad way. Like, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. But there is a lot to do in this game should you choose to do it. You could just critically path the story, but you could also just go off and see where the road takes you and go from there. It's still going to be, I think, at the end of the year, I'm sure it's still going to rate very high for me. When I look at the stuff that I have played so far this year that I have liked the most, I think it's probably sitting at a solid number 2 behind Hogwarts Legacy. But as more releases come out, I can definitely start to see it slip further and further down just because they couldn't hit that story. I mean, it's so out of character for something like this to happen to a major IP. Just really, really odd. But like I said, I really enjoyed the game. I'm glad that I played it. I'm super glad that I didn't wait to play it based on reviews, because I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, because I did play the first one. And I did enjoy the first one, but it was kind of like I played the first one because I just didn't have anything else to play at the time, and I like Star Wars. Like, that's why I played it. I don't particularly like games of this style a lot, but if they are going to be as tight as Jedi Survivor is, I could see myself playing more games like this in the future. That kind of small influence of the Souls and Elden Ring style put into it. So yeah, if you finish Jedi Survivor at this point, let me know what you think of the story. I really want to talk to other people about the story. The only other person I know that's playing the game has not finished it yet, so I can't talk to this stuff about him. So, leave a comment below if, on your thoughts of the story. In the comments, let's try and keep it, spoiler free. But I want to know if you were also perhaps disappointed in the story of Jedi Survivor like I was. All right. Something's going on outside. All right. So next up, I played Tape to Tape, and I actually played it on stream on Saturday night. I wanted to test out YouTube streaming, so I only streamed for a little bit, like 40 minutes or so. Mostly just to make sure everything was working with the camera setup, lighting, getting OBS output to YouTube. I just haven't had to do it. I've always streamed to Twitch. I wanted to make sure that the YouTube archive worked and the video uploaded and everything worked perfectly fine, so that was great. But yeah, I got to actually settle in and play some Tape to Tape, and I really, really enjoyed Tape to Tape. I got to play more. I only played a little bit of it. But so far what I have played, I really like. The biggest disconnect for me is that I have to stop treating it like a regular hockey game. It does not have the same mechanics as a traditional sports simulation, lifelike hockey game. There's no deking, there's no faking out, there's no penalties really, there's no line changes, there's no speed boost. Like, even in the simulation games, you can kind of hold a button down and make the guy skate a little bit harder, skate a little bit faster. None of that is in this game. I'm sure down the line there will be power-ups to make your players faster, or abilities that could cost turbo, or whatever it is. You can equip abilities on players. The only one I really got to mess around with is you could throw your stick like a weapon, and it'll knock down whoever's in the way, and that actually came in handy quite a bit while I was playing. I like the art style of the game. I think it's well drawn. There's not much atmosphere going on. I realized after the fact when I watched the stream back last night, the volume turned down a little bit too low. Definitely needed to boost it up a little bit. But there isn't that much going on. There's no real music. There's obviously some sound effects. There's some garbled announcer speak, kind of like how the adults talk in Charlie Brown. You can't really make it out. I need to keep playing because I didn't get to experience much of the roguelite elements to it. It is a run-based game. Eventually you will come across a challenge too hard for you to complete. Rinse, repeat to level up and get where you're going. There also seems to be some type of fantastical element, perhaps Lovecraftian element to it. There is a giant octopus with tentacles hanging out on the side of the world map. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I'm gonna keep chugging along with it. I am really, really enjoying it. I think if you are like me and you kind of miss that arcade sports experience that maybe you had with NFL Blitz, NBA Jam, stuff like that, this isn't going to 100% scratch that itch, because it's just not as well made as. So yeah, Tape to Tape's cool. Check the stream out if you want to see some gameplay. I'm sure you probably also have already seen some gameplay, here and there. Enjoyable experience so far. Buddy, you just don't want me to film, do you? So next up, I played a little bit of Humanity, which is an interesting little game where you play a ghost dog that is trying to herd a group of people to the afterlife, I guess. I'm not really sure. You're kind of pointing them in the right direction. It's a puzzle game. It's very odd. I did enjoy it, but I don't think it's going to be something that I spend a bunch of time in. But it is very interesting. It's isometric, top down. You can kind of move the camera to see, there's little platforms. And obviously there's rules in the game for how far these people can fall off a cliff before they die. So maybe if, the cliff is 3 blocks tall, they can't do it, but if it's 2 blocks tall, they can. So you kind of have to make them go a different direction. You can lay down icons in the world so that when they walk into the icons, it'll make them change direction or jump or whatever it may be. So it's actually kind of like oddly fast-paced, although I realize that you actually can slow down. If people are dying, it ultimately doesn't matter. It gives you enough time to try and figure things out.
Is this game why your dog has been nudging me towards cliffs lately?
Yeah, he is man's best friend. He's trying to push you off a cliff, bud. Yeah, so Humanity, I believe this is the team... It's a new developer, but I think it was co-developed by the people that worked on Tetris Effect. And it is a very Japanese game. And what I mean by that is at the era of the PS1 and into the PS2, there were a lot of weird games that came out of Japan that made their way to America. They got ports, like stuff like Intelligent Cube. What was the other one? Like Mr. Mosquito, like LSD, like stuff like that. Like, really out there kind of ideas. And this definitely feels like that. This feels like it could have been made in the mid to late 90s by a small team in Japan, and they just happened to get an American port. That's really what it is. And like I said, I did enjoy it. It's not necessarily what I'm looking for in a game right now. I don't think I'm going to keep playing it. Maybe I'll check it out a little bit if I have a lull and I'm looking for something to play, but it's not necessarily my cup of tea, I guess you would say. But it is well made. It is cool. It has an interesting art style, an interesting concept. It is available for free on PlayStation Plus if you have, I think it's like the mid-tier, like the $15 a month one or above. I think other than that, it's $30. I will say for what I played, $30 might be a little bit steep. I would say maybe $20 is kind of where this should kind of land. But it's well made, and I hope a game like this does well, so it shows that there is a market still for kind of oddball stuff going out there. Because they we need more of that stuff. We need more smaller, weirder games, right? Like that's always a good thing. All right, last up for what I played, and this was kind of a game time decision, is I decided to pick up Lego 2K Drive. I talked about it over the past couple of weeks. I was not sure if I was going to end up getting it because reviews hadn't really come out, and the ones that had come out, they all kind of said the same thing, like good gameplay, but all the reviewers felt like they were really being pushed to spend real money on the microtransactions because it is a game made by 2K. It's right in the title. That means it's a lot of microtransactions. They want their money. And it is weird because this game is definitely designed for children. Now, Lego is obviously very aware that there are many adult Lego collectors and builders. They have whole lines of Lego, that are 18 plus. Not like they're dirty Lego or anything like that, but, more complicated Lego, maybe. I don't think a 5-year-old really gives a shit about making Jerry's apartment from Seinfeld in Lego form. But, there are definitely, you can tell when you play the game, it's like, make sure you have your parents' permission before you play online, like stuff like that. They know who this game is kind of marketed towards. And then I kind of had a little bit of a worry midday on Friday before I even gone to pick up the game because there was an issue on PS5 where apparently it was deleting people's saves. And there was a few reviews that I read and watched that said, yeah, I lost hours and hours of save data. So I was definitely a little concerned about that. It did not seem to be affecting the Xbox side of things. So I ultimately decided to pick up the Xbox edition. And I haven't checked to see if that has been resolved. I think they were not allowing you to upload cloud saves. I think maybe they turned that functionality off on the PS5 side of things. I don't know if it's back on and working or not. I have not run into any issues on Xbox with any saves being deleted or anything like that. I don't know if I'm actually uploading anything to any Xbox cloud save thing. I think they're all just local to my system. And also I'm not really worried about losing progress because of quick resume. I turn the system off, turn it back on, and I'm right where I picked up. But let's get into the actual game. So it is a racing game, obviously. It's an open world racing game, though open to an extent. There are different areas for you to explore. You can fast travel between them. When you are in them, you cannot seamlessly go from one to another. But when you are in an area, the areas are quite large and varied, and there's lots to do. Lots of events. There's events that are like pre-planned, like there are objective points on the map that you can go and do. There's also events that you just come across in the world. You'll see these like glowing gates, like a finish line or start line. And if you approach them, it actually like pops up and tells you like what this event is. And it's done in a really interesting way. Like the words kind of float in the air, but they're very legible. Like you can easily tell what they are. And that's like the first thing that I want to bring up with this game is the presentation of this game. The UI in the world is incredible. I mean, it is superbly done. It is very, very well made. It is striking how good this game comes across from a presentation standpoint. I will say that once you get into the weeds, into the garage system where you are building and modifying and customizing your cars, those menus could maybe do a little bit of work. One of the issues I had last night was I had picked a part on my car and I wanted to change it for a different part. What I want to see is when I select that part, I want to see what category that part falls into. Because they kind of separated out like, oh, here are pyramid-shaped Lego parts. Here are plate-shaped Lego parts. Here are specialty driving parts like steering columns and stuff like that. I want to be able to pick a part and have it immediately bring me to that menu and say, okay, it falls under this category. Here are other similar objects that you can replace this one with. And it doesn't do that. I wish it would. There are some smart functionalities in that building system. Like if I just want to highlight everything of the same color to change that color, all at once, that's cool. You can do that. It's very easily done. If I want to duplicate a part, to provide symmetry on the car, you just press a button, it duplicates it, and it keeps clicking in until you're done. Like some of that stuff is really well done, but some of it is a little clunky. I haven't spent a ton of time in the shop, or in the garage. I have not built a car from scratch yet. I have done some heavy modification on ones that I have unlocked. Definitely changed like colors and materials and added different things. Like I added some cool blades to the back of my car, stuff like that. And one of the things to similar to the presentation is the visual style of this game. This game is amazing looking. I mean, it is really, really nice looking game. You can create clear Lego parts. So what I did was I made the entire inside of the car glowing, and then the body of the car clear, so you can see it glowing through the clear Lego. And man, it is very impressive looking, especially if you're racing at night. Like it is boy, this is an early contender for best looking game of the year. Like this is pretty well made. For the actual gameplay of the game, the actual racing side of things, a little bit Mario Kart. There are weapons, power-ups that you can you see them pop up, the icons, you race through them and you see them. I wish it was maybe a little bit more upfront of what each one does. There are some effects that I have gotten multiple times. I still don't quite know what they do. Sometimes the weapons will lock onto a car in front of you. Sometimes they won't. I wish there was maybe a little bit more visual indication of you just picked up rockets or whatever. There is an icon that shows on the car, but I haven't seen. I guess I have to do some digging in the options menu. I think there's a manual in there. I'm sure there's a list somewhere of what each power up does. Some are pretty self-explanatory. Like there's like a web. You shoot the web and it covers the car in a web. If you get hit with the web, it covers your screen, just like the ink from Mario Kart. And you tap the button to make it go off faster, like that kind of stuff. Then the other half, aside from the Mario Kart stuff, is this game is very, very heavily influenced by Forza Horizon. This feels like Forza Horizon. Everything is destructible. Some buildings aren't, but some things you wouldn't think are destructible are. Like I was in a tunnel, and it's a concrete tunnel with pillars in the middle separating the two lanes of traffic, and you could just crush through those pillars. Like it does not matter what they're made out of. And obviously that kind of is a double-edged sword, because when you're drifting around a corner, that guardrail on the edge of the road is not going to keep you from flying off the edge. You will just go right through that guardrail and right off the side of the road. So you definitely need to kind of understand your impact on the environment around you when you are racing, because there are definitely events, not so much the actual like story races where you're doing laps around a circuit, but the outside world events. There are definitely a lot that I had to restart because I just flew way off the course and there's not an easy way to get back. The one thing I did wish that they had was the ability to fly. That would solve a lot of problems in this game, but also would probably prevent you from exploring more than you would, because it would be so much easier to get from point A to point B. So I understand why it's not in there. Maybe we get a sequel, we get flying. But as it stands, you get 3 different cars that transform automatically. You can turn off automatic transforming if you want to. It does get a little weird, because if you just go slightly off the edge of asphalt, of pavement, you will transform into your off-road vehicle, and then the second you touch back onto that pavement, you transform back into that kind of like street car. So there are times where you're just transforming like rapidly as you're drifting around a turn, so it is a little weird, but I appreciate having that automatic transform on, because if you are like the wrong vehicle type, it does matter. You will go slower. And then you, aside from the kind of like street car, the road car, the off-road car, you also get a boat. Lots of water. Like every biome or every world, however you want to put it, has water sections, some more than others. There's some that are kind of more like lakes, and then the third world I kind of got to, you can pretty much get everywhere you want to go, either via water or via road. So there, different layouts for each one. It's been a really nice break from everything I've played so far this year. Hogwarts Legacy is kind of a more serious tone. Jedi Survivor is a more serious tone. Even some of the stuff like Terra Nil and Terrascape, those games don't have like humor and bright colors and all this stuff. Although, Terra Nil has some bright colors in it. So it was nice to play something that was a big break from that. And, I have not gotten to a point where I feel the pressure to spend money. I am still early on in the game. Maybe that will come at some point in the near future for me. But so far, I would say I highly recommend the game. I think it is really, really well made. If you have kids that are into racing games and into Lego, this is a no-brainer. If you were an adult or teenager or whatever that's into racing games and Lego, this is definitely a no-brainer. And even if you don't particularly care for Lego and just want a solid racing game that's in the spirit of Forza Horizon, this is that, because who knows when the next time we're going to get Forza Horizon is. They're focused on making, the next mainline Forza game right now. So it might be a little while before Horizon, I guess it would be Horizon 5. So this is maybe a nice stopgap in between the two. Now, there's certainly not... I don't know, I would say that, actually, I would say this is probably a smaller scale game than Horizon. We'll see what happens, because I think this game does have like a season pass and they're going to add more to it. I think that like at launch, like by default, Horizon's a bigger game than this is. I have heard with this game that the story can be done in under 10 hours. I saw some people say that it can be done in 4 hours. If that's the case, then I'm almost done with it, and I really don't think that that's the case. I think that maybe those people were just like critical pathing as much as possible, because there are like level caps on events. Like there will be events that you approach, they'll be like, oh nope, you gotta be level 7 to do this, come back in a little bit. So it does encourage you to go out and do all these side things and various missions and whatnot. So that kind of takes care of what I have been playing. And to be honest, over the next couple of weeks, as we await the next big releases, it's probably going to be more Lego, and I don't know, we'll see what else pops up along the way. Now that I know that the streaming stuff is working, maybe if I have the time this week, maybe I'll drag the Xbox in here, and maybe we'll stream some Lego. That'd be kind of cool to do. I'd be into doing that, so maybe that's a possibility this week. We'll see how the week goes. But that's going to take care of what I've been playing, and we'll be back in a moment with the news. All right, we are back with the news and coming off the rumors from last week of a new Mortal Kombat imminently being announced. It was officially announced this week, just a few days ago. Mortal Kombat 1 was announced, and also a bunch of DLC leaked. So we'll get into kind of all of that here.
If they're looking for actors for DLC characters, look no further. So many Christians to choose from. I could have a sweet fatality where I start a pirate radio station and kill my opponent with a sweet mixtape.
Awesome. I'm sure, man, you're at the top of their list for hot DLC characters. So before we get into the DLC leak, let's talk about the actual game. So yeah, it is called Mortal Kombat 1. It will be coming out September 19th, 2023. I think September now is already going to be too big. I'm really hoping that when they officially announce Spider-Man, that maybe that rumor of it being September is pushed back, because September is going to be very full. So the game is coming out for PS5, Xbox X and Series X and S, Switch, and PC. So no older systems, no PS4, no Xbox One. So the trailer came out, and it definitely shows continuity with the last game. Liu Kang has kind of control of time now and is kind of rebooting the world in his own kind of image, I guess. He is now a full-fledged god. He is the god of fire. So we see, characters like Sub-Zero and Scorpion pop up. People that you've seen before. We know that we're going to have Liu Kang, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, Kung Lao, Katana, Mileena, Shang Tsung, Johnny Cage, and it says in many others. There will also be cameo fighters, cameo with a K, which means a unique roster of partner characters that can assist during matches, creating expanded gameplay possibility for players. So I assume that maybe there will be cameo fighters, and then also full-fledged DLC fighters that, are not just for assist. I guess we'll kind of see how that is. They already launched the pre-order thing. NetherRealm they take their pre-orders very serious. So if you pre-order the game right now, you get Shang Tsung as an in-game playable character. I believe they did that before. I think he was also a pre-order character. And you will also get access to a beta in August. And then if you buy the premium edition or the collectors with a K edition, you will actually get to play the game on September 14th. So that is, so 5 days early. So 3 different versions of the game: the regular standard edition, $70, the premium edition, which is $110. Kind of odd that it's not $100. You get all of the stuff that comes with the standard version of the game. You get the combat pack, early access to the game beginning September 14th, and 1,250 dragon crystals with a K, which is the in-game currency. The combat pack will feature a Johnny Cage character skin with the likeness of famed actor and martial artist Jean-Claude Van Damme available at launch. Early access to 6 new playable characters available post-launch, and 5 new cameo fighters available post-launch. So yeah, that confirms that they are going to have 2 different categories of DLC characters, because they've gone ham on DLC characters. We've had like the Xenomorph from Alien, Predator, Rambo, Terminator, RoboCop, Spawn, like all these different characters coming in. So yeah, definitely not surprising that they're doing that now. If you don't know the significance of having a Jean-Claude Van Damme skin for Johnny Cage, is that the whole idea of Mortal Kombat, the game initially was supposed to be a starring video game vehicle for Jean-Claude Van Damme. And that is why Johnny Cage is like a Hollywood actor. Obviously, it ultimately fell through. Somebody else played the character of Johnny Cage, but that's always been like one of those things. Those great stories, in video game history is it's supposed to be Jean-Claude Van Damme. Then the last version of the game, the Collector's Edition, which is $250. It comes with all of the stuff we talked about before, as well as a 16.5-inch Liu Kang sculpture and an inspired Liu Kang in-game character skin, 3 exclusive art prints, a steel case for the game, and an additional 1,450 additional dragon crystals. So they are definitely going all out on this game. they know how to market these games. People are, the Mortal Kombat has a rabid fan base, and I am. After seeing that trailer, man, I am all in. I am super excited for this. And I was talking about this on the stream the other night. And as pumped as I am for Street Fighter to come up, man, that much more excited for Mortal Kombat to come out. So this is a big year for fighting games, and for me, I talked about this last week. I think that it's been a while since I've gotten really into a fighting game, and it's like, man, I'm going to play at least 2 out of the 3 big fighting games this year, and we'll see what happens with Tekken. I like Tekken, but I never really kept up with Tekken. Last Tekken game I was super into was Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag Tournament, so it's been a while. Yeah, I am looking forward to Mortal Kombat, and it's crazy because the story has been really interesting, and I want to see where they go with this. I might need to replay the story of Mortal Kombat 11 to kind of refresh myself to get ready for this. I remember the main beats of it, but yeah, I am pumped for that. So let's take a look at this leak here. It looks like Amazon accidentally put up some information on the product listing of the DLC fighters, and it has a couple of interesting ones in it. So Quan Chi, Omni-Man, Ermac, which I've always been an Ermac fan, Takeda, sorry, and then the last 2, Peacemaker and Homelander. Now, I have not seen the Peacemaker show, and I have not seen the Suicide Squad movie, but I do know that Peacemaker is a popular character. He's obviously popular enough to get his own show, played by John Cena. And then Homelander, I have not seen The Boys. I have seen the first episode of The Boys, but I did not. It just didn't get me enough to keep watching. Maybe someday I'll get caught up, as I've heard it's very good. But I do know that Homelander is. As a character, I believe he's just like a colossal piece of shit, like a horrible person. So we'll see what happens, with him in the game in terms of dialogue and maybe what his fatality would be. So yeah, interesting star. I do like, I know a lot of people don't like Quan Chi. I always thought Quan Chi was kind of interesting. I'm not familiar with Omni-Man. Is Omni-Man new, or am I just like totally blanking on Omni-Man? Or is this Omni-Man? When I Googled Omni-Man, it's from a show called Invincible. Is that what this is? Is it from this cartoon? I guess it is. I guess it is going to be Omni-Man from this cartoon called Invincible. What is this? Made by Robert Kirkman. Is this like an adult cartoon? Yeah, adult animated superhero series from Amazon Prime Video. Interesting. It's got a good cast. Okay, all right. Yeah, I am not familiar with this at all. I've never heard of this. I'm assuming, yeah, if this is a cartoon and it's going to be involved in Mortal Kombat, yeah, then I guess it is more adult oriented. I don't know if it's like, is it like hyper violent or something? I don't know. That's cool. Yeah, Mark Hamill. Okay, so J.K. Simmons is Omni-Man. So that'd be cool. You get J.K. Simmons. One of my favorite actors. So yeah, I think the hype train is starting early for Mortal Kombat 1, and that pedal will probably not be let off anytime soon, as I think they are well aware of the competition in the fighting game space that they have to face this year, with the new Tekken coming out and Street Fighter coming out. Street Fighter getting the most hype it has had in a long time. But I think that the initial trailer for Mortal Kombat 1, all the details kind of surrounding it, I think they're going to do just fine. But I think this is, if you are a fighting game fan, I think this is your year, man. Oh. Sorry for that weird pause. I have ordered my groceries to be delivered, and they were texting me about apparently they're out of chicken at the store. So yeah, that wraps up Mortal Kombat. And then the next one is, we are kind of getting that E3 season, that Keighley season, video game reveal season, if you will, started a little bit earlier than most of us thought. Traditionally, it's in June. Microsoft has already announced theirs. And then the rumor coming out was that Sony wanted to get out in front of everybody, and they certainly are, because it's just in a couple days. So when you watch this on Monday, it's on Wednesday. So it is the Sony Showcase. It's apparently going to be about an hour long, showing off games for the PS5 and PSVR 2. It'll be happening at 4 p.m. my time, which is right when I get out of work. So I don't think I will be able to live stream it. So what I will do is I will just record my reaction. I will not look at any spoilers, keep myself disconnected, record my thoughts on it as we watch along with it, and then I'll just upload that on Thursday morning. So there will be something for that, a little bonus, if you will, during the week for that. I am very excited about this, simply because this should be where we see a lot of information about Spider-Man 2, which is my most anticipated game. The first Spider-Man game, I think, is one of my all-time favorite games. I think it's absolutely incredible. I don't need to keep going on because I go on about it all the time. So the prospect that this game is getting closer, we're approaching the release date, hopefully just a few months away. I really want to see what they're going to do with it. Coming off the teaser trailer they did for it initially, it looks like Venom will be in the game. It looks like Kraven will be in the game. Kraven is one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. He is criminally underused. I know that they have the Kraven movie coming out in the near future, so maybe they are going to go all in on Kraven. They're going crazy for Kraven. But I want to see what they got coming out. I want to see what they're going to do with PSVR 2. Now that PSVR 2 is available to buy in stores, when I went to pick up Lego 2K Drive on Friday night, I'm pretty sure I saw a PSVR 2 sitting in that GameStop. Or maybe it was just a display box telling you can get it online. I'm not sure. But I mean, it was, at the very least, if it wasn't an actual one, it was being advertised for purchase. And that's the issue with that headset, right? Is it's an amazing headset from a technological standpoint, but the library is severely lacking. So they really need to come out hot with some interesting titles. I would like to say, at the very bare minimum, they got to get some of the bigger PSVR 1 games out, like Astrobot should be out on PSVR 2. Or maybe they announce, here's another Astrobot game, and if you pre-order it, you get a port of the first one or something like that. Because still to this day, one of the best PS5 exclusives is that built-in Astrobot platformer. So it seems weird that they wouldn't want to continue that series going forward with how popular it has gotten. People really enjoy that PS5 built-in, pack-in game, and the people that played it seem to really enjoy that PSVR 1 Astrobot game. So I would like to see, I'd like to see what they're going to do with it. Maybe we see something from Naughty Dog here. Maybe we get an update on the Last of Us multiplayer game. Maybe we get a small teaser of what they're doing next. They did say that they have internally decided what their next big game is going to be. My best guess is they are probably feeling a lot of pressure to do Last of Us Part 3, so I would not be surprised if that's what it is. There have, of course, been a lot of rumors going around that we could see another Uncharted. I think it's likely that if we see another Uncharted, it probably won't be made by Naughty Dog. I think Sony might pass that off to somebody else, because Naughty Dog, I assume they're feeling a lot of pressure from HBO, from Sony, maybe even internally on themselves. Like, we've got to keep this Last of Us gravy train a-rolling. We got to keep this going. So I really want to see the description from PlayStation says you can expect to see a glimpse at some new games from PlayStation Studios, as well as a plethora of titles from third-party developers and indie creators. So it's your standard, kind of E3 presentation. I do think it's a little weird if it, they said it's about an hour. If it's I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm correcting myself right around. It actually will be longer than an hour. It doesn't say if it was less than an hour. That seems a little strange. But yeah, more than an hour. Okay, then yeah. So, I mean, this really is their kind of summer games set piece. This is showing what's coming for PlayStation. And this really gives them a chance for that preemptive strike. If they really feel like Xbox is kind of continuing with just not having games, this is their chance to fire that shot. Say, hey, we got a ton of games coming, a ton of exclusives. There's still that kind of, I don't think Microsoft is really interested in engaging in it, but there still is that competition between the two. Even in the eyes of the consumers, even though as consumers have matured and gotten smarter about, these systems, because these systems are very, very similar from a, under the hood perspective. It does come down to games, and I think that Xbox is better, PlayStation is better. That conversation is kind of done. It's more so I want to play these games. I got to get the system to play these games, not just blind loyalty to a particular platform, because nobody is going to be blindly loyal to a platform that doesn't have games. It's not like you have people out there being like, "Oh, PSVR 2 is the best console on the market." That's not happening. All right, next up, a little bit of befuddling news. Amazon has announced their next big game, and it's kind of unsurprising considering the properties that they have acquired. They're going to make a Lord of the Rings game, and not only that, they're going to make a Lord of the Rings MMO.
Yo, fuck Lord of the Rings. I auditioned for Gandalf, and they thought I was some homeless guy and tossed me out of the room.
Yeah, I would have done the same, man. We're getting from the Embracer Group, Amazon Games, and I'm not sure this other company, the initials in the logo were ME. Oh, it's Middle Earth Enterprises. I'm sorry. I am not a Lord of the Rings fan, so I don't keep abreast of everything that they are doing. But this is made by the team that did the open world MMO New World, which I don't think was super well received. I can't remember if it's shut down or not. But it makes sense for them to make a Lord of the Rings game for Amazon Games' next project. Like, that makes sense. I think that TV show they did was somewhat well received. I honestly don't know. Like I said, I don't follow the Lord of the Rings stuff, but it does make sense that, like, hey, we spent this money to acquire this, legendary, pop culture phenomenon IP of Lord of the Rings. If we're gonna make a game, let's make a Lord of the Rings game. Like, that totally makes sense. It's the MMO part that doesn't really make sense. I don't want to say that it would be impossible for an MMO to be successful these days, but I will say I think it would be very, very hard for one to be successful these days. The people that are still playing MMOs are playing the same MMOs they've always played. It's not like there's some scrappy newcomer that is doing really well for itself. And if there is a game that fits that description, it would be Elder Scrolls Online, which, let's see here. Elder Scrolls Online released in 2014, so it's almost 10 years old. So if that's the scrappy newcomer to the MMO scene, yeah, there hasn't been a lot going on. Games as a service has really kind of replaced MMOs for that online connected world sort of thing. Even long-standing single-player franchises have adapted to that model, like Diablo. The Diablo 4 is games as a service. It's a live game. The hot online kind of genre has been the Battle Royale genre, Fortnite, PUBG, all that. And even that is on kind of a downturn for everything except for Fortnite and perhaps Apex Legends. Apex Legends is still doing well, it seems. But Fortnite, still is kind of the king dog in that genre and is so big that nobody else is really throwing their name in the ring outside of Call of Duty, trying desperately to make Warzone, the biggest Battle Royale out there. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, deciding to do an MMO in 2023, and obviously for a game that's not coming out probably until 2025, 2026, it's just an odd choice. I just feel like, there are always going to be people that try and resurrect once popular genres. But there are some genres of games that are just never going to come back and be highly successful. Like, we're never going to have text-based adventure games be highly successful. And I think MMOs kind of fall into that. Now, if you could do an MMO that's not your traditional World of Warcraft style and it's more like maybe like a Destiny or something like that, yeah, maybe you got a shot. But even Destiny is kind of a shell of what it used to be. You know, I think there was a really good quote, I wish I could remember who said it. It may have been Jeff Gersman, who said that like all the new Destiny content is not designed to bring new people into the game. It's designed to keep the people that are still playing. And I think, you know, I commented on it when Microsoft showed some footage a few months ago. They did the section on Elder Scrolls Online where a lot of that presentation, you know, their time slot in that presentation was devoted to showing new players that it is easy to get into this game. You can pick it up and play. You know, yes, there's been years of new content, but you can easily get in there and experience all of it. It is not a hard process. So, you know, I don't know. I just don't get it, I guess. But, you know, that's just me. All right. Next up after that, there was a brief thing that I was going to touch upon. Just as a real quick, is that the European Union, the EU, has approved Microsoft's acquisition of Blizzard. It's still the UK holding out, so it is not approved entirely yet. Like, it is not happening yet, but it's another big step towards making it happen. I still think that it is going to happen, but as of right now, you know, the UK is still a no, but another big, you know, kind of hurdle has been crossed with the EU approving. So next up, we got some interesting stuff out of Take-Two. So the CEO of Take-Two, Strauss Zelnick, says that he thinks it's going to be likely that we are going to get another round of mid-generation refreshes. And what he means by that is like when we saw the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro. He thinks it's going to happen. If it does, I guess I wouldn't necessarily be shocked because it is the opportunity to not do a full brand new console and still sell a console's worth of units to consumers. But I just don't think we need it simply because these systems, for the first couple of years of their existence, were hard to find. I had to enter a lottery system to buy mine. Like, these were not an easy thing to come across. And even though they were still selling a ton, a lot of those were scalpers, you know, that were purchasing units. But, you know, regular game players got their hands on them as well. But they were hard to find, and there's still a lot of people that don't have them. And I think some of it still has to do with, you know, a little bit higher price tag. They're $500. That's not the easiest pill to swallow, especially if you're someone like me that buys both systems. You know, and I think the other thing is because of COVID, because of game development being slowed down, we still, 3 years in almost, do not have a huge amount of games for these systems that are exclusive to these systems. A lot of the games that are coming out, yes, they are great, but they are still a little bit hamstrung by having to be developed for previous generation consoles. It is nice that more and more games are being announced saying, hey, no, we're only doing it for Xbox Series X, we're only doing it for PS5. And then it, you know, creates the whole other question of, are games still being hamstrung because they have to be developed for Xbox Series S, and is that detrimental to game development? I don't know enough about that to say yes or no. I've heard developers say yes it is, and I've heard developers say no, it ultimately doesn't matter. So we're still waiting to see kind of what these systems can do. I will say that Sony was very impressive at launch, or that launch window, with having games out that really showed off what the system can do. You know, seeing a 60 frames a second Spider-Man with like 0 load times. Seeing a game like Ratchet and Clank Drift Apart, which really showed off some of the processing power and manipulation they can do with the system to create fast transitions between worlds. But we haven't really had another one of those like technological showpiece games since then. And, you know, maybe we will in the coming 2 years. But I think we really just don't need a PS5 Pro, an Xbox Series X. Like they're just really, really unnecessary. And I get that maybe they want to try and have some parity with what's going on with PC, but PC power is kind of at that point again where it is changing very rapidly. We're really running into instances where games are coming out on PC where a lot of people's PCs that they've had for 5 to 6, maybe even 10 years can't keep up. The minimum RAM requirements. If you want to see this ray tracing, if you're not on the newest card, you can't do it. Stuff like that. And I think people are looking at consoles for a complete experience. They could just turn it on and play and not have to worry about it. And to say to those people that, oh yeah, even though we haven't really shown you what these consoles can do, we're going to release more powerful consoles. Like, that just doesn't sit well. Like, I don't buy it. That just seems like a shameless cash grab at this point. And then what happens if those are hard to find? Now, we're certainly not in the situation we were a couple of years ago with supply chain issues, but supply chain issues are still out there. I'm a toy collector, and there are still a lot of instances of toys being heavily, heavily delayed because of supply chain issues. And those are bits of plastic, let alone high-powered CPUs and, chipsets and all the different components that go into making a video game console. So, I don't know. I would say that I think that they would largely be unnecessary. Let's just ride this generation out and see what happens in 4 years when they decide to make a PS6 and all that. But the other thing from Take-Two was they suggest that 2024 will be an incredibly profitable year for Take-Two. Now, why would that happen? Well, most likely it's because they are looking at it being the release year for GTA 6. There's an article on Kotaku that goes into it. And I think that it's likely that 2024 is the year. Grand Theft Auto has kind of been in that situation where they announce and then delay. So maybe we get an announcement this year and they say, hey, it's going to be spring 2024. And then we get the announcement in January that says, oh, it's going to be fall 2024. You probably just solve all of this by just saying, hey, it's fall 2024. But, outside of Spider-Man, GTA 6, I just can't wait. I cannot express enough how much I love the GTA series. It's probably my all-time favorite gaming franchise. GTA 5, as somebody that rarely replays games, I have gone through the story mode in GTA 5 probably 6 or 7 times at this point. Probably put well over 1,000 hours into that game. It's my favorite game in the series, and I am eagerly anticipating to see what the future holds for GTA.
Oh, I love the GTA games, man. I spent many an hour searching the city looking for people that look like those who have wronged me in the past. Then I get them in my car, drag them out to a river and drown them. Then I shoot my initials into their lifeless meat pockets.
Fucking hurt you, man. Like, what is your issue? I've also done the same. The big leak that we saw last year with GTA 6, it looks like there's going to be a male protagonist, female protagonist, similar to how GTA 5 had the 3 different protagonists that you could switch between on the fly. It looks like it's going to be in Miami. I was kind of hoping for maybe something that wasn't Miami. But, Rockstar is really one of the few developers where if they put a game out, I trust in them that they are going to deliver a great game, and I don't really have to worry about it. So I am eagerly awaiting what is on the horizon for the Grand Theft Auto franchise. I like the fact that they are still seemingly committed to having that great single player content, because I just don't have an interest in playing Grand Theft Auto Online. With how much money GTA Online makes them, those fears were real that maybe they would abandon the story, single player story mode, and instead just have a story mode that's online. Because there were supposed to be plans for single-player DLC. They were announced. Single-player DLC was coming to GTA 5, and it was very quickly abandoned once they saw how much money was being raked in by GTA Online. Maybe the content that went to GTA Online was going to be what we got for the story, although I think that was probably modified a little bit because I think Franklin is like the only character that really shows up there. I don't think they see Michael or Trevor at all, so I don't know, maybe there's some differences there. I'm not really sure. But yeah, I'm excited for GTA 6. All right, last up for this week. And I get that most people that probably listen to a show like this or watch a show like this don't really care about sports or sports games all that much, but damn it, I do, and we're going to cover them. So a little while ago, EA Sports announced that they were going to bring back the NCAA football game. The game initially was removed from development, their development cycle, because of the lawsuit with former college players suing, saying like, hey, it doesn't have our name in the game, but that's my jersey number, that's my skin tone, that's my height, that's my weight, I was a very good player. The character in the game is a very good player. Like, it's very clearly based on me. And they won. And that has led to the NIL stuff, where college players can now make money in college. They can sign autographs. They can get endorsement deals, all this stuff. A lot has changed. And so EA announced that they were going to bring back the NCAA football games. Now, for me personally, football is not my favorite sport by any stretch of the imagination. I will watch football, but I don't particularly care for it all that much. I'm a baseball and basketball guy. I like hockey. I would honestly say that I enjoy curling more than I do football. I actually consume quite a bit of curling. I always watch the international stuff, always watching the Olympics. All that stuff. But yeah, I enjoy football. Football's fine. But I will say that I actually always liked playing the NCAA football games over Madden simply because of the franchise mode. Franchise mode has always been my mode in sports games. Now I do play an equal amount of franchises as I do the single player stuff, like in MLB The Show. You can have your franchise where you're controlling the whole team, making your trades, signing free agents, all that stuff, or you can just play as one player and rise from the minor leagues to the pros. So I kind of split my time, but franchise has always been near and dear to my heart. And franchise mode across the board in sports games has really been lacking outside of the NBA 2K series. They really customize that franchise experience in NBA 2K. I love the fact that you could start the game during the previous offseason, so you can change the draft order, draft a different player, you can sign free agents and totally transform your team. Like, I love that level of customization that MLB The Show doesn't have, and the NHL games don't have, and Madden certainly doesn't have. Madden franchise actually used to be pretty good. Back in the PS2 era, Madden did have a very good franchise mode. I played a lot of it. But franchise mode was always my big thing in the college game. I liked starting with a smaller school, winning, getting an offer to go to a bigger school, and doing my recruitment and all that stuff. So this headline this week, EA Sports College Football is reportedly headlined by the Dynasty mode, has gotten me pretty excited. It does look like they are kind of becoming a little bit more firm in saying that the game is coming out next year. When the game was initially announced, they said it was some time away. They were just in the very early stages of making it, but it looks like they are going to try and get it on track to come out next year. And I am very excited. So this is an article from IGN. To quote here, this is from EA Vice President and General Manager Daryl Holt. He said that Dynasty Mode is something the development team is passionately focused on. And there's a quote from Extra Points Matt Brown saying Dynasty Mode is where a lot of the energy is being spent on development right now. So I would love to see that, because there were some really cool aspects for Dynasty Mode for the college football games, especially for somebody like me that kind of likes to role play in your head when you're playing a sports game. I've always enjoyed the aspects of a sports game that don't take place within the confines of the game. They take place entirely within your imagination. I liked doing the whole recruiting thing, losing out on a big recruit, trying to steal a recruit from a state where maybe they would traditionally pipeline into that state school. Seeing if, at the end of a season, if there's a coaching job available at a bigger school, to really challenge yourself. I remember one year on the original Xbox, I did a Dynasty Mode that lasted like 20 years and worked my way from a small school to a big school. I also used to really like the the aspect of the game where if you were a smaller school and you started winning more, you would actually see the crowds become bigger because they would come out to watch you because you were performing better. So I would love to see this stuff. I want a return to form away from this garbage that there are these blind box transition modes like Ultimate Team and Diamond Dynasty and all that stuff. I just have zero interest in that stuff. And I get that that's what makes the money. But you got to try and appeal to people that aren't interested in that too, because they're also spending the same amount of money, that $70, to buy that game. Yes, in the long term, they're not going to spend a ton of money on the other stuff. Yes, they're not your cash cow. They're not your whale. But they still do matter because they are spending money on your game and they want a complete experience. They don't want just this one particular mode. They want to experience the game as a whole. So I'd love to see that stuff. So that's going to wrap things up for this week. So yeah, coming this week. So on Thursday, there will be the video of the reaction to the Sony showcase. I'm also going to try and carve out some time to film a new episode of Full Motion Sickness. That probably won't be out this week. That'll probably be like a next week thing. I got to figure out what game I want to do. I am still in the process of getting my office set up. I kind of have the bare minimum right now to be able to record and do this show, but I still have a long ways to go to get everything set up. And then if I have the time, maybe we'll stream some Lego 2K Drive if I can find the energy to drag the Xbox 10 feet away from the living room and put it into this room for a few hours to record some gameplay or stream some gameplay. So yeah, should be a fun couple of weeks on the channel with some new stuff, a little bit of variety on the channel. But other than that, Christian, do you have anything to say before we head out?
We've been doing this for a while now. How come this doesn't show up on my IMDb page? My agent says I need to get at least 1 credit a year or else she's going to stop validating my parking.
Dude, 30 people watch this. I don't know what to tell you, man. We're not on IMDb. So yeah, take it easy, everybody, and we'll see you next week.